July 2008, a grandmother makes a desperate call to 911 as her 2-year-old granddaughter has been missing for 31 days. Not only did no one report this little girl was missing, but her own mother had been going out, visiting bars and living life as if nothing had ever happened. As investigators uncovered lie after lie, what started off as a missing child's case quickly turned into one of the most controversial murder cases in American history. This is the case of Casey Anthony, and as I say in all of my videos, I'll be talking about this case with respect for the victim, their family and everyone else impacted by this case. Before becoming one of the most recognisable faces in America, Casey Anthony lived at home with her parents George and Cindy Anthony in Orlando, Florida, and in 2005 Casey Anthony would welcome her own daughter into the family, Kaylee Anthony. Friends and family would describe Kaylee as bright, energetic, bubbly, and so loved by her grandparents. Much of Kaylee's early life was spent at the Anthony family home as her grandparents would help to take care of her. June 16, 2008 would become one of the most important dates in the full entire investigation, as according to Casey, this was the date that her and Kaylee left the family home together. But investigators later determined that this was also the last day that anyone saw Kaylee alive apart from Casey. And Kaylee simply vanished. Days passed, then weeks, no missing persons report was filed. Family members had no idea that Kaylee was gone, and police had no idea that a little girl was missing. While Kaylee's whereabouts were unknown, Casey continued living what looked like a normal social life. She went out with friends, went to bars, went to clubs and entered nightclub contests, and she also got a tattoo reading Bella Vita, which is an Italian phrase meaning beautiful life. These actions would later receive enormous public attention, and people questioned why someone whose child was supposedly missing looked so unconcerned. Everything would change on July 15th, 2008. After learning that her granddaughter had been missing for over a month, Cindy Anthony would make a call to 911. During the call, she explained also that Casey Anthony's car had been recovered from an impound lot, and in the trunk it smelled like there had been a dead body inside. Police immediately opened a missing child's investigation, and detectives started questioning Casey Anthony straight away. Casey initially told investigators that Kaylee was kidnapped by a woman called Zenada Gonzalez, or as she would say, Zanny the Nanny. But as investigators looked for any evidence to prove this story, they found no proof at all that this woman even existed. She also claimed she worked at Universal Studios, so detectives accompanied her to the property, and while walking through the building, she finally admitted that she no longer worked there. And all these false statements had a major turning point. Investigators thought, if Casey's lying about such easily verifiable facts, what is she actually telling the truth about? And as the investigation intensified, police prepared themselves to look for Kaylee on a much larger scale, and what they would find next would change the full entire case. For 6 months, investigators would search lake, fields and wooded areas around Orlando, hoping to find Kaylee Anthony alive. But on December 11th, 2008, a utility worker would make a devastating discovery in a wooded area just less than a mile away from the Anthony family home. Human skeletal remains were found with child's clothing and a child's blanket just nearby. Dental records would prove that this was 2-year-old Kaylee Anthony, and because of the condition of the remains, medical experts weren't able to find a cause of death. It was ultimately ruled as a homicide, but there was no specific cause of death. Prosecutors argued that Casey Anthony had intentionally killed her daughter before disposing of her body in the woods, and among all evidence was duct tape that was found near the remains, and prosecutors suggested that it was placed over Kaylee's mouth as a part of the murder. Investigators also focused in on Casey Anthony's car, as witnesses such as Cindy Anthony, Casey's mum, had described a strong odour coming from the trunk, and prosecutors argued that this smell was consistent with the smell of human decomposition, although this conclusion was disputed at trial. Casey Anthony's defence team presented a full different version of events. They argued that Kaylee had passed away in a tragic accident, saying that she had drowned in the family swim pool, and according to the defence team, George Anthony helped to cover the incident up. But George Anthony has strongly denied those allegations and testified against the allegations in court. George Anthony also tried to take his own life, but he has publicly spoke out about this, saying he deeply regrets it and he is so grateful to have survived. Casey Anthony's defence team have also challenged every bit of major evidence that the forensic team have. They said there's no DNA to prove murder, there's no murder weapon and no eyewitnesses. The trial began in 2011 and it quickly became one of the biggest, if not the biggest, media event in the United States. Millions watched daily and prosecutors argued that Kaylee Anthony was lying for weeks to the police because she was covering up a murder. But on July the 5th, 2011, the jury delivered its verdict. Casey Anthony was found not guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse and aggravated manslaughter towards a child, but she was found guilty of providing false information to law enforcement during an investigation. This verdict shocked everyone. People outside the courthouse were in disbelief. People were outraged at this verdict. But for many, Kaylee Anthony is the last focus, a little girl whose life was taken far too soon and whose case changed the way America view media, criminal investigations and the justice system forever. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'm Crime with Macy and I'll see you in the next one.